Hello everyone, it is Joe here from OmniPoke, the channel that brings you guys everything Pokemon. If you're looking for PTCG live codes, make sure you check out the Potown store. You can get a 5% discount on your orders using that code OmniPoke. For today's video, we are going to be looking at the Scarlet and Violet format. It's starting to wind down, but we do have Milwaukee regionals as well as the Turin special event, and then we also have one more regional in Fresno in a week or so's time. What date is that? That's on, so next weekend, the 9th of June. So I thought, especially with 1 month remaining for us to round out our invite with cups and challenges, it was worth doing a bit of a tweaks since the last time I looked at some of these top performing decks and also talk about what is on top right now. So this is probably going to be one of the last times I really look at this format outside of just raw tournament results. But on the left-hand side here, we have the in-person top 8 frequency graphic, and on the right hand side we have the top 8 frequency in Trainer Hill data. So this is the online performing decks, and they paint a very similar picture. A couple of things jump up and down, only a placement or two, but the overall overarching theme is we have Lost Zone Box, we have Mew, we have Lugia, we have Gardevoir, and actually in 5th place we have Gardevoir in both of these categories, but I'm not looking at Gardevoir today because I think it is substantially worse into the top decks than it was earlier on in the format, and that's where it got the majority of its placements. But we will be talking about Tina, which is kind of in that top 5 as well. So those are the sort of top 5 lists I'm going to be breaking down today, and basically just coming up with consistent lists at this stage, because we're starting to get quite well-rounded archetypes where we know the matchups at this point, we know what we're expecting to see in tournaments, so just playing something very simple, very consistent, that you know well is going to be the best way for you to get those last few points that you need for your own invite. And I think the top decks play into each other quite well and have similar patterns of play that they'll go for in many times they're up against the expected metagame. So let's have a look at my first list. This is going to be the Kyogre build of Lost Zone Box. Now, if you are a proficient Lost Zoner, I do think Kyogre is the strongest build you could be playing right now. The matchup data down here, which is being slightly covered up by my own logo here, the first one you're up against is this Arcdura, which is actually one of your weakest matchups. This unfortunately just lumps together all the Lost Zone stuff apart from Charizard variants, so there is still a little bit of issue here with the online data matchup stuff, but the matchups are really, really good for Lost Zone Box. You're only really awkward into Arcdura and Tina. Everything else is like pretty solid. Lugia, yes, not ideal, but I think the Kyogre build has one of the stronger times into it compared to the other Lost Zone builds, because you have the Aquastorm catch-up mechanic. We have seen the Azul, Grant, Danny contingent of players all been doing very well with slightly different builds of Kyogre as the weeks has gone on. This is kind of where I'm at right now with my list, obviously inspired a lot by their great successes, where we are going to be playing the Pokestops, and that's really the main differential here. I have got an A-Spec switch in the deck, which is not exactly super spicy, but it's an extra pivot out because you are cutting the beach courts in favour of stops, so this just gives you an extra physical pivot out, which I do think is still important, because you are, at the end of the day, still trying to ramp to that 10 in Mirror, and you're still trying to get to 7 as soon as possible for the explosive Dragonite and Raikou V plays. But yeah, I feel like this deck is very powerful. The Pokestops help you just reach the bottom of the deck no matter what you're up against, which allows you to have that big Kyogre Aquastorm combo, which I think gives you some chance into the Arc matchups, be it Dura and be it Tina. I think the biggest issue with Dura and why it's such an awkward matchup is that they have one hit KO potential into Dragonite much easier, and they have their Lost Cities, so they can pick apart Oli Greninja and stifle your draw. They can limit the amount of Sableyes you have access to and that sort of thing. So these are all things to bear in mind. Then we have the sort of turbo version where we're subbing out the Kyogre package, where we cut a Recycler, we cut Kyogre, we cut an Energy. We, of course, straight away have to put in Drapion. We're also putting in Boss's Orders, and I'm flip-flopping Pokestops for Beach Courts. It's just a great option to have, really, when you know that you have to probably Flower Select 3 times if you're trying to get your 7 in the Lost Zone turn 1. You need to Colress, then select 3 and Vacuum to get to your gates turn 1. So I feel like Beach Court is still really, really powerful in the deck, and I think this is just stable going forward. Yes, you could try having the Skyseal Stone in here as well. We have seen that split before, but I do think it sort of takes away a little bit from the deck overall. The only time you really want to see that Skyseal Stone, I feel, is into the Mew matchup, and even then, we're seeing a lot of fusion builds of Mew, and that kind of gives diminishing returns to the Skyseal Stone anyway, because they're probably going to make you go for a Meloetta, and then you're just going to cram hit them, or hit them with Greninja first anyway. So, yeah, at the moment I'm pretty solidly on the Forest Seal Stone builds of Lost Zone box. Onto Mew then, and it's had a real uptick in popularity, actually thanks to the Fusion Strike build. So I have done a comparison down below in terms of the matchup data between the two. It does seem like the Fusion build is really enjoying the Arcdura that's been coming out of the woodworks as of late. It also seems to be stronger into Lost Box Charizard. I don't think there should be that much of a disparity, honestly, because I feel like using a single prize Pokemon in the Fusion build is going to make life easier for the Charizard player, but of course the Deoxys is in there as well, so maybe it just makes the Lost Zard attack too many times, whilst also throwing some hand disruption, if you are going to be playing that sort of hybrid build of Fusion Mew, which we have been seeing, where there's still Pass, there's still Judge, there's still Roxanne, that sort of thing. So yeah, improving your Charizard Lost Box is, I guess, somewhat interesting. I'm still a believer in DTE-based build of Mew. Surprisingly, it's really good into Fusion Mew. I thought this would be closer, but it seems like DTE Mew just has one up over the Fusion build for the most part. And it just seems to be slightly more well-rounded, just by having more disruption at your disposal. Seems to be better into Lugia marginally as well, which I think is quite important. Also, small percentages into the Lost Zone box, which is the non-Zard build as well, which I think is pretty relevant. I'm playing the Oricorio and the Avery because I am expecting Mirror, just based on how much Mew has been succeeding as of late. And I am back up to Double Choice Belt because, you know, sometimes there's been the one cleansing, one belt, but I do think Guardy is becoming less popular, and I think, you know, bursting through the Lugias, bursting through the Arc decks is kind of the priority number one. So, again, a straightforward, simplistic shell. The Oricorio comes in to help not only the Mirror, but also against Arctina and Arcdura. This is actually massive, I feel like, because you can keep your Mew out of range in the opening stages and really hurts their prize race, actually. So I think Oricorio is, like, really important, once again, in DTE Mew, where it basically just doesn't come out to play against the Lost Boxes, but it's really good against everything else. So, yeah, seems pretty strong to me. Onto Lugia then. Lugia continues to do very well, and we've basically got an ironed out 60 at this stage. There'll be one omission that you'll be noticing from the list in front of you, and that's that I've cut Radiant Serena. And that's because everyone plays Radiant Serena, which means every Lost Box player is naturally trying to play around Radiant Serena. So if everyone's expecting it in the deck, I feel like you could gain a slot. And you know me, I love to gain a consistency space. In this list, I've just chosen to play an extra Stadium card. This could also be an Ace-Spec Great Ball, which I thought about, or weaving in an Impact Energy. All of these are cards that I have on my bucket list of things that I want to add into Lugia. But Mesagoza is filling that middle ground of just being an extra path bounce, but also being somewhat of a consistency card. So I'm being slightly cheeky by cutting Serena. It also does make your Collapsed Stadium slightly less powerful. But I feel like with Penny and Collapsed in the deck, you already have a good amount of damage removal against Lost Zone anyway, and your opponent should be playing around Serena even though you don't play it, because they can't take the risk that you're the one Lugia that's not playing the Serena. So I'm trying to do the mental gymnastics here of gaining a space, and I think gaining that space, especially in a Stadium in this case, helps your Arctina matchup, helps your Mew matchup, and in general is giving you an extra coin flip card in the opening stages to get into the game, because how many games have we seen of Lugia where it's turn one and it's down to one Aroma flip or one Mesagoza flip, and giving yourself additional outs to this card maybe gives you a secondary chance of a coin flip, or you just see it alongside other stuff that little bit more often. So yeah, I'm being greedy with Serena. Let me know your thoughts. If you don't want to be greedy, just cut the Mesagoza and play the Serena and be you know, just have the normal 60 that we've seen do well over and over again. In terms of Lugia, its matchup spread is really interesting. It's basically only bad into Arcdura. It seems bad into Gudra, but a lot of this data sort of encompasses the fact that Urshifu wasn't in every Lugia list. It was Duraludon previously, and I feel like you should be pretty fine into Gudra. Plus, Gudra is really down-ticking right now in terms of the data. and it seems like pretty okay against the majority of other things. The Fusion Mew seems to be dicey, but so did DTE Mew, so that's not really changed too much. And I think bumping that extra stadium gives you small percentage points. So Lugia continues to be strong. Let me know your thoughts on the Serena thing. I will do anything to gain a space in a deck list, and this is proof of that for sure. Then we have Gardy. Gardy looks really weird on paper. It's really shone massively at the EYC with a second place. But since then hasn't really reached those heights. It's not just Lost Zone that's keeping this deck at bay. It's also just the fact that there's a lot of Path in the Tina and Mew decks. There's a lot of Lost Zone, and even Lugia's still kind of close. So yeah, Lugia's actually that sort of sub 50-50 deck against everything, which is kind of wild. But this list is essentially towards second place list, minus a Psychic, minus a Serena for the Fog... Sorry, minus a Research for the Serena and the Fog Crystal. I've definitely played around with Champs Festivals. I think when there's a lot of 280 hit point stuff around, like Arc, the Champs Festivals are really worth considering. And I'm also considering the second copy of Worker in the deck list, because there's just a lot of Path around right now, and it is a headache, resource-wise, for Gardy to sort of play around that. But I still feel like this is a really, really good shell. There's no surprise why this did so well. It still encompasses so much that I like about the deck. And I'm still a Skyseal Stone believer. I think there's enough Lugia, I think there's enough Arc and enough Mew where you get value out of this in a lot of situations. So I still really like that Skyseal Stone over the Forest. Even though that Forest is an extra, +1 consistency out, I feel like the deck is consistent enough as it is. So, yeah. And also, if you don't believe in the sort of 12 versus 11 energy thing, you can just revert the Fog Crystal back. Essentially, the only change you need to make from towards the EYC list is play a Serena as an extra gust out, because it's just good. And then finally, we have Arctina. There's definitely a debate around Arctina and Arcdura, so again, I've done that sort of comparison. Dura seems to be much worse into Fusion Mew, which is why I'm leaning towards this direction. But it seems to boast slightly better times into Lost Zone Box and Lugia. So Arcdura is the sort of dodge and weave deck of the format, where you're targeting Lost Box and Lugia, which sounds really promising, but you are essentially sacking your Mew and Fusion Mew matchup, which is upticking. Whereas Arctina, again, kind of the more well-rounded list. So that just sort of goes towards my personal playstyle. Similar thing that I was saying with Fusion Mew, where it has spikier matchups. I would prefer to play DT Mew, just have a more safer across the board like spectrum. But I still feel Arctina is absolutely fine. It's such a easy deck to pilot in that you're trying to do the same thing on turns 1 and 2 almost every game, and then you're just trying to throw question marks at the opponent with Path and Judge and just get into the game and do your thing that way. You have a great engine to fall back on, as we've seen, and this is a very straightforward list. Similar to what I was saying with DTE Mew, I'm now back up to double belt instead of 1 belt, 1 cleansers, because I'm expecting less Gardy, and the belts are just more important at getting through Dragonite and Lost Box. I just feel like that's more integral, and also getting past V-Guard energy in Lugia matchup with your Tina and stuff. So I just feel like that outweighs everything else. So yeah, that is my sort of top 5. There are no thrills in any of these lists, to be honest with you. I've tried to go through all of them in a very simplistic fashion, because I think at this point we're at a well-developed point in the metagame where you just want to play something simplistic and make sure it just does what it says on the tin over and over again, because I think that's the best thing you can do for cups and challenges at the very least. And if you're just saying, oh, I just need X placement at a tournament, rather than having to spike the event, I feel like just playing consistent lists is going to do better than having something wacky and techie. So yeah, let me know your thoughts down below for these deck lists. These are kind of my top 5 right now. And yeah, hope you enjoyed, and good luck for that last month, the last push to Worlds. So cheers.